Hello and welcome, and in today's video I'm going to share with you the top 10 Big Ark tames, so let's get into it. In at number 10 we have the Moser, and this creature really does deserve to be on this list for many reasons, and in my opinion it is the best big sea creature. I wouldn't really say the Basilosaurus counts, as it is slightly too small of a creature, but you know, you could argue against that as well. But in terms of the Moser, this thing is an absolute powerhouse of a creature. It has a very great bite, and with the X-Mosers on Genesis Part 1, you have yourself an even better version of this creature, and they are really great options if you want to defeat the Moser, although I've only ever used Megalodons for it. But you know, considering the list, they're obviously not going to make it. Now, this might slightly contradict my last thing of saying the Basilo is too small to be on this list, as the UT is kind of not considered a really big creature, but it is a somewhat similar size to the Rex actually, and compared to things like Allos and Carnos and all those things, it is bigger than them, and I'm putting the bar at the UT. The UT is the smallest creature on this list, by the way, which is obviously why I wouldn't have put it higher, as they also do need to be a big creature and a powerful one to be on this list, and this isn't the biggest out there, although I'd still definitely call it a big creature. It definitely does fit that for sure. And in terms of its abilities, this thing is a really great boss creature, with its courage roar buffing your tames on your side, obviously, and allowing you to deal even more damage to the boss and have damage reduction on top of that, which is just a really nice thing to have. And its fear roar is great as well for debuffing enemy creatures, although not very useful for bosses because obviously of the size limit, but great if someone's trying to raid your base on a Pteranodon and you can just use the fear roar and then they simply can't even raid you anymore. Now, next up we have the Bronto, and this could definitely count as a big creature. The Bronto is absolutely huge, and it is one to be admired. This creature is a very great gatherer of berries, and with its platform saddle you can also build a metal farm on the back of this thing, although that isn't the best use for these things now, considering cryopods exist, so you can very easily transport them, and obviously if you have a platform saddle on a creature, it's just going to demolish when the cryopod is used on this creature, so that isn't actually very widely used anymore, and they're just mainly used to be cryoed around and gather berries, which is a great use for this thing, as its tail is so long it can gather so many bushes at one time. Definitely a creature if you haven't tamed already, which you should tame at some point. And next up we have the Rex, and the Rex really did have to be on this list at some point. It is one of those big carnivores, and not the biggest, which is obviously why it isn't further along in the list. It is still a carnivore of very decent size, which deserves to be on this list in my opinion, and for obvious reasons. This is basically the best boss creature because creatures like the Giga and the Carcharodontosaurus aren't allowed into most boss fights, obviously the exception being the extinction boss fights, as they are allowed into those, but they are really an outlaw as they are so much more powerful than many, if not really all, other bosses on all other maps. And yes, you could say the Genesis bosses are quite strong as well, but still not as strong as the Titans, which you'll find on Extinction. But the Rex isn't meant for that kind of boss fight, it's meant for the kind of boss fight which you'll find on the island, a very linear one, and actually the one you'll find on Genesis Part 1 as well. X-Rexes, is it X-Rexes? I think there are X-Rexes for sure, can't remember if yeah, it has to be X-Rexes on Gen 1 are a great shout as well if you're on Gen 1, as you have even more buffed Rexes. And if you have Gen 1, just get some X-Rexes and transfer them onto any other map, which obviously you'll be playing on. And it will be a really great addition to your creature library, as you have an even more buffed creature of the creature which we all know and love. Next up, we have the Astrocetus. And this definitely is a huge creature, and also, if you didn't know this already, Astrocetus means space whale. Just something cool if you didn't know that, but it's pretty obvious by what it is anyway, and astronaut, you know, and Cetus is quite commonly known for being whale. Either way, this thing literally is a space whale, although it doesn't need to be in space to fly, But, you know, with its magic abilities, I can't remember which, there's some kind of charge it has. It kind of makes sense, doesn't it? And this is an absolute PvP power haul for so many things, as it is so versatile for any PvP use. And it actually is a surprisingly fast creature as well with its teleporting abilities. Definitely a creature which you should not underestimate. In at number 5 is the Golem, or the Rock Elemental, whichever one you really want to call it. Most people call this thing the Golem, so I'm just going to go along with that one. And this is a huge buff stone being which is extremely powerful, as are pretty much every creature. Actually, just every creature on this list is quite powerful, although the Bronto doesn't really rack up in the melee damage department. But this thing definitely does. It has a huge attack, which deals so much damage, and on Scorched Earth, for defeating Deathworms, it is a great ability to have. Although not really an ability, it's just the fact that it just deals insane damage. And obviously, Deathworms can be used to gather Deathworm horns, which are great for taming Mantises, and the Mantis is a truly tremendous tame, which everyone on Scorched Earth, or even maps like Ragnarok, should tame. I'm not sure about what other maps these things spawn on apart from Scorched Earth, but I know they do appear on some other DLC maps, and I think they do spawn on Extinction. Now we have the Giga, and you could probably expect this thing to be on the list. This is an absolute powerhouse of a tame, and it has not really any abilities apart from its sheer strength. And sadly, its stamina is one which really should not be celebrated in any way. Its stamina is absolutely awful. I don't know why its stamina is that bad, considering the next creature on the list is of similar size and of similar use, and its mobility is actually really great. But the Giga is still fantastic at dealing all of that damage. The amount of damage this creature deals is absolutely insane. Like, I can't really, even to this day, get over how much damage the Giga deals. When you compare it to a creature like a Rex, this thing is so much larger than a Rex, and also just deals so much more damage. And sadly, when tamed, it loses its bleed ability, although wild ones do still keep that, but the next creature on this list does keep its bleed ability. Also, you can just see how big the Giga is there, as it didn't even need to swim to cross that river. This thing is an absolute hunking beast, which, as always, you should name Tiny Tim. If you know the reference, comment it down below. And now, the creature which I was talking about was pretty obviously the Carcharodontosaurus. This is a creature of immense power, and one which should be praised by any Ark player, and is actually one of the more recent additions to the game, and is an absolutely huge powerhouse of a creature with a wealth of great abilities, pretty much all the same as the Giga, apart from its Blood Rage, which allows it to do even more damage than the Giga, while not having a rage meter and having the mobility to actually be useful for other things apart from just purely fighting stuff, although the extra stamina you really are going to notice. And yes, it doesn't have the best one, and you shouldn't level it like I'm showing here in this example, but you can still get it to a high amount of stamina, but you'll probably just want a stamina mutation if you're going for a high stamina Carcharodontosaurus. Otherwise, obviously, you're just going to go for those damage and health mutations, and they are going to be much more useful. And compared to the Giga, this thing's taming method is also a lot more of an interesting one, and I have a guide on my channel if you want to know how to actually tame one of these things. In at number 2, we have the Rhyniognatha, and this is a big creature, and I'm going to count it as one because it can pick up creatures like the Rex, and it is an absolute powerhouse, and one which is extremely useful and extremely accessible to any Ark player out there, apart from mobile players, and I don't know if this thing has come to Switch yet, but it may do, considering it does spawn on the island, and that would really make sense overall, wouldn't it? But I'm not sure on that one. But still, for PS4, Xbox, and PC players, you have this creature for sure to use in your Ark experience. Obviously, only spawning on the island and Lost Island in any swamp biomes. And in the old version of Ark, just being ASE, these things are actually extremely rare to find, and you can obviously raise the dino count or use Destroy Wild Dinos to do a dino wipe and then allow more of these things to spawn on your map. Whereas in ASA, there are just so many of these things. Actually, I think there's a bit of an overspawn. I feel as if there are too many of these things. If you want to know how to tame one though, you'll want to get the pheromone out of a male Rhyniognatha, which you can do by killing it. Then you'll want to tame yourself a Bronto. Some other tames are usable as well, but the Bronto is advised. Then after that, you're going to want to get those resources, which were on screen about 10 seconds ago. Not necessary if you do want to actually tame this thing, but only necessary if you want 100% effectiveness, which, you know, may not be worth it in a lot of cases, considering how difficult all of those resources actually are to obtain. And then after that, you're going to want to net gun it or trap it in some way, and then get its health down as low as you possibly can. Use the magnifying glass if you obviously don't use the awesome spyglass mod like I do, and obviously you won't have access to that in ASA at the moment as it isn't in the mod selection. Then you want to feed that pheromone to your Bronto, and then dismount your Bronto, and then just kind of watch from afar, really. It's not going to attack you if you've done it right. It will simply impregnate your dino, and then your dino will roll over after its cravings timer, which is where all those resources are useful, and then a baby Rhyniognatha will come out, and you have yourself a full Rhyniognatha. And in at number 1, we have the Reaper. And what really did you expect? This is probably, if not definitely, the best big tame out there. It has the mobility, it has the damage, it has the looks, and it has the taming method to go along with it. So let's start with that taming method. Essentially what you do is you'll find a Reaper Queen in the wild. Then after that, you'll want to trap it, and you'll probably have a light pet on you, but not during a later step, as I'm not sure if it will work. But damaging it, it will obviously be easier to get it to below 1000 health, which is what I think it is. Either way, it will have a purple glow. Use a light pet for that stage, and then obviously turn the light off, go up to it, and then it will impregnate you, and then you will gather loads and loads of XP to get 100% effectiveness. Again, not necessary, but it is a really fun step in the taming. And then you'll want some Reaper pheromone glands for when the baby Reaper is born, as it will kill you a lot of times, and they're kind of useful in aiding with actually just getting that first imprint on the baby to even claim it as yours, as it can be an absolute pain sometimes. And then once tamed, you got yourself a beast of a creature which deals so much damage, and actually has a lot of mobility too, and a wealth of abilities, including that tail ability which it has, which I'm not sure if it does torpor or not, but it is definitely a creature which deals insane amounts of damage, and it is just a really cool one on top of that.
Now, of course, we must shout out our Patreons, Ekaterina Pichkova and Karina Thorne, who are our paid Patreon members at the moment. Thank you for all your support. I really appreciate everyone on this list. Everyone else is, of course, free members. Thanks for the support, though.